People filter in, they will catch it. So awesome. And yeah, we are recording this, everybody. So if you want a copy of it after the presentation, you'll get a QR code at the end. You'll get a follow-up email so you can review this, share it with your friends, whatever makes the most sense to you. So chat is disabled. Oh, well, there we go.
Oops, sorry.
So awesome.
Thank you for letting me know. I was wondering why there was no chats.
Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, we got all sorts of Jersey people here. Love it. I'm from New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey. I lived there for a while. I actually lived in Woodbridge for a long time, and that's where I started working in college admissions. So I'm super familiar with Edison. I've had tons of students from there. I live in Maryland now, in Annapolis, and I got to say I haven't found any good Indian food yet, and I really miss it. So I'm really glad to have the community here. I've given presentations before to JP Stevens High School and Edison High School. I've given presentations to the middle schools, which are Wilson. So the libraries. So you guys might have seen me around. Nikki Bruno with Princeton College Consulting. I'm a college admissions counselor, and I help students to maximize their potential and make sure that they get into the top college of their choice while considering all sorts of factors. As I build the college lists, certainly what parents want in terms of their budget and location, of course, what the kids want mostly in terms of what they want to study and what sort of vibe they want, whether it's a big school, a small school, everything in between. But today's focus is going to be on the college admissions essay and how to write one that will really impress the college admissions committee. Because at the end of the day, the college admissions committee has 15 minutes to review your application. So the essays are one of the only ways that you can actually show off who you are, what your personality is like. Unless you get a chance to do an interview, which not all colleges offer, but many do. That's a small chance to show off, but that also, you're talking to an alumnus for the most part. So the essay is really the only chance you have to directly communicate to the person who's actually making the decisions. And I think in this day and age, as the trends have changed from a lot of schools, maybe not focusing so much on test scores, that the essays will really matter a lot more. Because that's, again, they have fewer decision-making points. So now the colleges want to know more about a student. And especially in the US and with selective colleges, character traits are huge. They want to know who you are as a person, how you will be on campus. They want to know what your interests are. They want to know what your passions are. And that's really hard to tell from a transcript and a test score. So at the end of the day, these essays, they are personal statements, they are personal stories, and they're not like anything that you've ever had to write in school before. Like I said, when we were just signing on, maybe some English classes, if you're a senior, maybe, or if you're a junior actually, are just now beginning to get a little bit into the process. But these kinds of essays are not analytical, right? You've been taught over the years how to write and analyze a piece of literature or create an argument. And this is nothing of the sort. You have to analyze yourself. And that's not something that a lot of students have had a chance to do. So it can be pretty difficult from that perspective. But hopefully today I give you lots of tips and tricks on how to think about the essay process, how to write a really compelling essay. And then at the end, I would love to open it up to questions and answers, not just about the essay process, but feel free to ask anything about college admissions overall, and I would be glad to help answer it. So I am going to start. So this little pinwheel here just gives you the overview of everything that the admissions committee looks for. So we like to split it up in between what I call the numbers and character traits. And the numbers are just what I said, your GPA, your test scores, how many AP classes you took. And that's all one piece of the bucket. And that all matters tremendously. Obviously, you're not getting into a selective school without good grades. But the rest of the picture, the rest of the pie, you can see is much bigger. And character is really shown through your resume, your letters of recommendation. I mentioned the interview, demonstrated interest, socioeconomics, VIP status. That's a little bit of a different category we don't have time to get into today, but application essays, this is the one chance that you really have a lot of sway in the process, right? Like your GPA is what it is. You can't change the past, right? You can't change what you got in freshman and sophomore year. But the essays are something you can constantly work on and improve. So it's pretty much the only part of the application that you have entire control over, which makes it a really great opportunity to showcase your talents. So the admissions committee, as they look at your whole application, right? And again, they only have like 15 minutes to do so. They're asking themselves 3 primary questions. First, they want to know, are you going to thrive academically? And again, that's back to the numbers. They look at your transcript, they look at your test scores, if the school is looking at test scores, and they have to determine, will you succeed academically at this college? Can you actually handle the level of work that you're going to be offered, not just at the school, but maybe in the major that you're applying to as well? We all know that some majors like engineering or, neuroscience are a lot more math heavy per chance, but if you're going to study literature or humanities or history, business, you might not have as much math going on. Although business, they definitely want to see some math these days, depending if you're doing marketing or finance. So that's one part of it. Then they ask, are you likely to go on and do meaningful things with your life after college? And one reason they care about that is a little bit selfish, right? I mean, they want to have a good reputation as a college. They want to put out students, people into the world who are going to go out and do amazing things and then go back and say, thank you so much, University of Scranton. You are what changed my life and made me able to do these things, right? So it's a little bit selfish, but it's also because they want to bring in students to their own community and make sure that when you are there, that you're going to participate in the community, you're going to contribute to campus. You're not just going to be a number walking around, going to class, going back to your dorm, watching TV, falling asleep. You're going to be part of the whole campus. And they judge that through what you're already doing right now. So that would be your activities. And again, through your interviews, your letter, LOR stands for letter of recommendation. And the essays are the way to show that off. And the other question that they ask that the essays and other character parts of the application can help show off is, are you authentic, right? Are your goals and desires in authentic alignment with your character? And what that means is, are you doing things because of a genuine interest, a genuine passion, a genuine curiosity? Or are you pursuing these things because you think it checks off a box, because it's something that your peers want, your parents want, you think that society wants? Are you only doing things to boost your resume because you think it'll help you get into college? Versus you're doing all these things because you just think it's so much fun. And this is kind of the linchpin to the whole thing almost. If students are pursuing activities that they have no authentic interest in, a good college admissions committee can sniff that out. And it's because these topics are not going to show up anywhere in their essays, anywhere in their interviews, right? If you say that you want to study engineering, but you've never built a thing in your life, they're going to wonder, why are you interested in engineering? Because you haven't done anything to show that. So authenticity is really something to think about in terms of how you are planning pretty much everything that you do throughout the years of high school. And I know we have a lot of students here, maybe in their younger years, and that's a whole other conversation as well. But it's definitely something to think about, that each activity that you're choosing, do it because you want to, not because you think it looks good, because they can tell. So overall, right, the admissions committee wants to know, does the student have a genuine desire to maximize their potential? Again, are you going out? Are you challenging yourself? Are you seeking new opportunities because of your own curiosity and of your own interests? So 3 key questions. And again, the essays should be able to answer at least those second 2. So let's dig more into the essays themselves. So as the admissions officer are reading the essays, they're also asking them about your communication skills. So can you communicate clearly? Does the admissions officer know what you're trying to say? Is it in a concrete enough way that they can really envision it, right? And this comes down to really good storytelling. Is there a little bit of a plot line, or at least a structure that they can follow? Do they get a sense of who you are? Back to your character traits, right? Are you somebody who's humorous? Are you a little bit more serious, but also driven and determined, right? They need to be able to get a sense for, if they were in front of you, if they had that opportunity to actually meet you, would they get a good sense of who you are through your writing? They ask themselves, do I like this person? Would I want to hang out with them? Right? We're all human. There's not robots reading these applications, at least not yet. I don't think AI has gotten that far yet. Right? There's still humans reading this, and they're looking for that human connection. And part of this whole process, and in your writing, you have to be able to build a connection with that person who you don't see, you haven't met. So that's why it's really important to have emotional tells in your writing. Will they work well with others? Will they be an engaged member of the community? Do I learn how they will contribute to the community? So again, colleges want to bring in students who are going to be active on campus, who are good team players, who are going to ultimately go out and take advantage of everything that the college has to offer. So again, fun fact, right? They spend on average 2 minutes reading any particular essay. I mean, some of the shorter essays are maybe 150, 200 words. I mean, they look at that for 20 seconds. And the longer essays, they might be 650 to 800 words, depending on the school. Maybe they'll take 2.5, 3 minutes top if it's a really long essay for like a special scholarship program. But they don't have the time. I mean, the thing about admissions officers is a tough job, especially during application season. Most of them are pretty young in their careers. They're in their 20s, early 30s. They have to read 50 applications a day at least, if not more, like 100. So again, they have 10 to 15 minutes per application. You really have to get the message across strongly and concisely. And consider that the person who you are speaking to, your audience, might be this overwhelmed, stressed out individual. They don't get paid a ton of money, right? So they have probably so many concerns going on. And so being able to communicate to them on a human level and maybe make them laugh a little bit, maybe even make them cry a little bit, whatever it is that you can do to get them engaged and interested in your essay is going to be the key here. So here are some of the main keys. You want to have a hook, again, hold their attention. They're stressed out and overwhelmed. They want to get sucked into something a little bit different. Something that will be perceived as interesting. So whether that's an interesting topic or your style of writing is a little bit more interesting. And that's something that develops over time. And kind of like I said in the beginning, if I can work with students as soon as they're freshmen, really develop their writing skills over time, that would be great. But even if I take on a student beginning of their senior year, there are different ways that we can mold the essay writing process to make it sound a little more interesting. A clear structure, again, making it easy to follow, and then bringing emotion into your writing that will convert them to be your advocate. Mastering advanced literary techniques that will separate your essays from thousands of others. So overall, back to kind of what I was just saying, it wants to be interesting. You have to really cue into the human side of this process, because this is a sales pitch. This is marketing. I mean, as much as I'm a college admissions counselor, I'm a marketing consultant. I am helping students market themselves to the colleges. So ultimately the colleges will buy that student. And if any of you are in the marketing profession or know anything about it, you know, it's all about emotions. It's all about tying into the way that humans have a desire. So with your writing, you have to make the college desire you. That's what it is at the end of the day. So emotions, literary techniques to make it interesting, and topics that might not be super cliche. And we'll talk a little bit more about topics as we continue on. So character strengths, I talked a little bit about that before, and you really want to pick and choose a few character strengths to highlight. And there is a website I like to use with my students, viacharacter.org. And it's cool because you can take this quiz and it basically spits out, here are your top character traits. And so maybe you want to pick like the top 3 to 5 that pop up on this quiz, or even from your own reflection. And these are the traits that you want to weave, not just in your personal statement, but throughout all of your essays, because those are the character traits that the admissions officer is going to associate with you. Let's say you have a witty sense of humor and you're intellectually curious and you have, you know, this super gritty determination about you. They might in their heads make this little summary of you, and then they all take notes, right? They have notes in their system and say, oh, this student is super funny and crazy emotionally intelligent. They would be great on campus. Can't wait to have them in our chess club, whatever it is. So this picture is just a list of character strengths, character traits, nothing new. to any of you, I'm sure, but it's really important to pick out the top strengths, right? Because most people are a combination of probably all of these traits, right? But you can't highlight everything. That's why it's really important to pick which are the ones that are the most important, which are the ones that are the strongest, so that you can really rely on them as a theme and something to come out in all of your essays. So again, your character strengths, how do you reveal them? Your actions, your insight, your connections, and this is what ends up being revealed in your essays, right? So your actions being, what have you done? What is the evidence of these character strengths in action? So your essay might be a story about a time that you did something, right? Through your insight, meaning how self-reflective are you? Do you understand the why behind your motivations? And then this would go in your essay as well. So this is the action that you took. This is the why you took that action, right? This is what you've learned from yourself over time. And then the connections you make. And this doesn't just mean connections like between you and community, but the connections you make between you and other ideas, or between two different ideas. So I'm sure you guys are hurting for an example already. So one essay that I really enjoyed working on, one of my students a while ago, that really knocked it out of the park, I think. And she ended up going to Barnard, which, if you don't know, is like the sister school of Columbia. So it's like Ivy League level, but it's a women's college. So her essay was about the time that, so she was an EMT, and she became an EMT. Her inspiration was one time when she was younger, her mother had a medical episode. And so we kind of opened up that essay with this scene of her being this sort of scared little girl, and her mom was like passed out. And then the EMTs came in and they were working on her mom, but like one was super compassionate and, you know, really helped her as a little girl try to just stay calm and understand the situation. And then that inspired the student to become an EMT herself. So this was her connecting kind of her motivations to her experience and also to her desire to be compassionate. And then throughout the essay, she also highlighted on how she, as she was an EMT, took opportunities to become compassionate towards other people. So there is one particular story she told about how one sort of frequent flyer, as they call him, it was actually an elder person who had some sort of medical issue and routinely would end up in an ambulance. But one thing that stuck out about this person was that they were deaf and could only communicate through sign language. So she decided to take it upon herself to learn sign language, because nobody could really communicate with this person very well. Like maybe they could write things down, but their handwriting was very shaky. Maybe they had Parkinson's or something. I forget the exact details. But regardless, what ended up happening was, you know, she took this leap to, she saw a need in her community. She was inspired by how she was treated when she was younger. She decided that she wanted to be that kind of person who ultimately in the future, you know, maybe there will be a little girl that she can now pass on and, you know, her wisdom and her experience and comfort her and kind of just continue paying it forward in a way. So ultimately, the student also decided to change her major. She wanted to do pre-med, but she changed it to public health so she could continue to advocate for people with disabilities. So this one experience that she had, right, it was the way that she reflected on it, what it meant to her, how it affected her motivations. It was clearly authentic because this was something based on her personal experience. And she was clearly very involved. I mean, being an EMT is a huge commitment and you see all sorts of gnarly stuff. So it requires a certain sense of courage, right? So she had all of these character traits showing in her essay. And I think it was a great essay, and she ended up going to a great school, and, you know, that's the best end of the story that we could hope for. So that's what we mean by, you know, what do you do? How do you think about it? What are your motivations? And then what connections are you making between your experiences, your motivations, and ultimately what the world needs? You know, how are you creating something from that experience? So there are two main types of application essay. You have the personal statement and the supplemental essays. And then I'll go into some more details about those. So the personal statement. So the main purpose, communicate something about yourself that admissions committees will not learn from any other part of your application. So this means that ideally, a story in your personal statement should not talk about something that you already talked about on your extracurricular activities, that something that a teacher might talk about in their recommendation letter. Yeah, there might be some overlap sometimes, right? And certainly if you, just like the example I just gave, the girl who was an EMT, obviously being an EMT is on her extracurricular activity list, right? But you don't have a chance on the list to talk about every single detail. And certainly that particular story wasn't in there. So I say that, you know, something they won't learn from any other part of your application doesn't just mean the exact topic, like what it was that you did, the action part, but it's the insight and the connections. That's not going to be anywhere else on your application. So it's really important to think about, what are the admissions committee, what are they already learning about you, and what new can you add to it? So this is just a quick slide of the Common App prompts, and I'm not going to read off all of these. You can kind of read them on your own, but they all kind of dance around similar themes, sort of your background, lessons you've learned, how you thought about something, reflecting on gratitude, accomplishments. But something else I really like is this seventh prompt is just a topic of your choice, something you've already written, or maybe something new entirely. So I work with students who can get locked in sometimes to, well, I want to talk about this, but it doesn't fit into a prompt. That's what prompt number 7 is for. And honestly, when I start working with my students on essays, we don't look at any of these prompts until the end. We find the story that fits, we write a really good essay, and then we figure out at the end what prompt fits it. And if it's none of them, then it's number 7. So the whole point here is for me to tell you that the world is our oyster, right? Don't feel like you have to fit yourself into a box of a particular idea. If you have a really good story that doesn't fit into any of these other options, they still want to hear it. So that's some good news. I'll give you like 3 more seconds to read them all. I'll sip some water. Okay. So creating an interesting essay, right? So we talked about before, you want something that's really going to spark their interest, and what is interesting for an admissions committee is something that they haven't seen 1,000 times already, right? So on the left here, we have the unexpected story and the expected character strength. So the unexpected story is a main topic that's something a little bit more uncommon. And even if it's an expected character strength, one that's very common is just determination, right? If you are applying to a situation that most high schoolers haven't been in, then it'll be a little bit more interesting. The other option is the expected story, but the unexpected character strength. So expected story being an activity or topic that many high schoolers have done before. And don't worry, I'm going to give you guys examples in a second. And of course, the less interesting essay, or least, is the expected story with the expected character strength, right? It's a story they've heard 1,000 times before. So here are a few examples, right? So you have to tell a story that uses these less common associations in order to keep it interesting. So common topic, common character trait. Sports stories, super cliche, whether it's catching the winning touchdown pass or, you know, going into the finals of the season and you're the underdogs. The sports story is super cliche if the character trait is about perseverance, determination, right? We're coming into the last soccer game of the season, but we practiced super hard and our teamwork was on point and like, oh, yay, we won. Like they've read that story 1,000 times, right? Other essays that are super common, the Lego essay, like I built something cool out of Legos and then, oh no, I was missing a piece, or oh no, something broke and I had to get creative. Like I've seen that one 1,000 times, and you can apply that to, you know, robotics is very popular. Same thing, like the elevator on our robot wasn't working, so we had to get creative and rig up something new. And these essays are just, they're good essays, you know, in a vacuum, but the admissions committee has seen it over and over and over and over again. They're just like, oh, here we go, another robot essay, right? So the trick is, if you're going to have a common topic, which is okay, try to come up with something a little bit more interesting. So our example here, common topic, the sports story. Well, character trait, how about being reflective? So seeing the power of democracy that takes place in the huddle, right? Something a little bit more insightful. And, if this particular student compared it to examples around history, for example, and made comparisons between, I don't know, the founding fathers and football, right? That would be something a little bit less commonly associated. Trying to think off the top of my head, some more ones. I had a student last year write about fantasy football, except from the perspective of using like analytical skills in order to like choose the best team. And he wanted to go into business. So it was basically like an ROI analysis that he did on like investing in certain players. So I thought that was a little interesting. What else off the top of my head? I've had students talk about, the more artistic ones, talk about like music, for example, but instead of talking about a musical piece and how, being expressive felt so good and how it was so great to have the audience enjoy it, that would be sort of a common one. I had a student a couple years ago compare music to math and really digging into it, like how like the physics that's associated with the creating different notes and chords, and then talked about psychology and how it affected, different frequencies affect different parts of your brain, and like got really nitty gritty and nerdy about it, about the music interest. So it's okay to have a common topic, but let's find a way to analyze that really digs in and takes a bit of a different angle. And I try to stay away from the word unique. One, it puts a lot of pressure on people to come up with something unique. There are like millions of college applications that happen. So it's hard to be truly unique, but uncommon, that's a lot easier to do. And again, the uncommon topic and a commonly associated character trait, that's also a more interesting essay. So perseverance and determination, again, very common character traits to come out, but this was an essay I actually worked on a student with last year. Uncommon topic. This student had no interest in aerospace engineering. I never heard him talk about it once. He wanted to study business. And going through, I have all these just like random questions I ask kids to kind of brainstorm. And he told me he was super into flight simulation. And when I was like, oh my gosh, that's super cool. I've never met a student who just for hours at a time like researches flight paths, and I don't know if you guys know anything about a flight simulator, but it's legit. It's like the real thing. So he basically taught himself how to fly airplanes, even though he has no interest in like aviation or engineering or any of that, like sort of what I would assume to be an interest of that student. Like he didn't even mention it until I asked him. And when I told him that this should be a great essay topic, he was almost like confused. He's like, but this doesn't say anything about, how I would do in business. And I was like, but that's the point. This is something that they're not seeing anywhere else on your application. This isn't even really an extracurricular activity. It's just something you kind of do in your free time. So, but we can show how, you had to teach yourself how to fly airplanes, and it happens in real time. Like you put it on autopilot, and then his essay was about how he took the longest commercial flight. And I don't remember from where to where, but as you can imagine, it's like a 12-hour flight across the world, and he set it all up. He went flying, he took off his headphones and then sat down. His computer just ran it the whole time. And it like shows it on Google Maps, like the sky view. I don't know. I thought it was super cool. And he ended up he's going to Wake Forest for business, which is a really good program. So at the end of the day, even if you want to show up common traits, having an uncommon idea actually works very well. So students, if you have that really random activity that you do that you don't think colleges would be interested in at all, I think they would be interested. I had a student last year also wrote about speed cubing. I don't think he set a record, but he definitely impressed me how fast he could do the Rubik's Cube. Like they do Rubik's Cube races. And he also makes ambigrams. So like we did an essay that kind of combined his like artistic and scientific endeavors. So really cool thing. So everything's on the table in terms of topics. Well, maybe not everything, but if you're concerned if something's good or not topic, you can reach out. So, all right, so we've come up with the topic, we've come up with the character traits. Now we want to talk about structure. So again, we want to make it readable and you only have 650 words for the personal statement. So you have to get the message across pretty quickly as well. So an outline is good. And there are some pretty standard structures that I think work. So one of them is the hero's journey. So the hero's journey is very classic in literature. You have all watched a movie and read a book that has a hero's journey. Think about, The Lion King, Star Wars, Harry Potter, probably any Marvel Universe movie there is out there, Lord of the Rings, of course, classic literature, the Iliad, the Odyssey, it all follows the hero's journey. And this is a structure that we can sort of shrink down and put in an essay. And you could use that topic, your character traits, and sort of format it in this hero's journey way. So I like this because it's again, you have to tell a story. So this is a great way to just have a plot line to follow. So what is the hero's journey? You have your status quo, right? Just living life like normal. The inciting incident, something happened to knock you off of normal, right? So, let's I'm a bit of a nerd. I like Lord of the Rings, right? So status quo, right? Frodo's chilling in the Shire, life is good. They're having their second breakfast and wandering through the flowers. And then inciting incident, Gandalf is like, yo, there is this ring and you better keep it safe. And Frodo's like, oh man, what's happening, right? And then the formative experiences, the challenges. So, all right, he's got to go and meet up with the elves, and then meet up with the dwarves, and then meet up with the humans. The whole fellowship is coming together. And then they do all of the things that they're doing. They go through, the caves and the mountains and all that stuff, right? So all these challenges, one after another, are happening. And then the denouement. So that's sort of like the falling action, right? So getting towards the end of the story, right? Like now he finally gets rid of the ring, and then everything's sort of like he has to get back home again. And then outcome, the new normal. So back in his normal life, he sees all his friends again, life is happy. So we can boil all that down though into a story with a student, and you think about, okay, here's my life, here's the thing that happened, here are the challenges that came out of that thing that happened. And then, okay, I overcame the challenges, here's what I learned about myself in this process. And then the new normal, here's how I'm going to take those lessons and I'm going to apply them moving forward. It's just a very nice, comfortable story arc. And by the end of it, you have hopefully a little warm, fuzzy feeling at the end. So hero's journey, great structure, right? So status quo. Okay, I just went through all this, right? Normal life. And then something happens, call to adventure, major challenges, insight, right? This is a good chance to talk about the character strengths and values and being reflective, right? And then now what do you do different? So there's some other structures that I like as well. So, if you have a narrative story, your hero's journey is good, but maybe there isn't quite, it doesn't quite fit in the box. You can still just have a narrative, beginning, middle, end, chronological order. As long as you're showing off the character traits and writing it in an interesting way, that's what matters most. But other structures that I like with students, montage, so a collection of related anecdotes that fit a theme. So I had a student this past year write a montage style essay, which was basically her. So again, through all those random questions I was asking, I learned that she has 10 nicknames, and each of those nicknames are correlated with a different activity that she does and reflective of her character traits. So her essay was basically a list. And it was here's this one nickname, and this is the name that my track teammates call me when I'm on the ground helping to, work out some cramps in the calf, my teammates' calves, and trying to encourage them to keep moving forward. And she kind of listed each of those names and different little stories. One was from Chet's Club, one was her with her family, and this was her goofy side, this was her serious side. So I thought it was a great way that you really got to know her through this essay, because it showed all the different aspects of her personality and even literally gave them a name. So I thought that was pretty cool. And so there are different ways to do that. I've also had montage essays I've written with students. I had one student who I learned just has an antique collection, just loves to collect old things. And so he wrote about kind of the stories behind different antiques and how he personally related them and how he related them to different times in history and how all that related to economics, which ultimately is what he wanted to study. And then there's the manifesto essay, which I've only had a few students do because it really is a personal style. It has to be something that is authentic to the student. Not every student is really good at, just sort of, it's almost like a rant almost, but one that's structured and clear. So passionate telling of your personal beliefs with evidence of it in action. And probably my favorite manifesto essay I've written with a student was from a few years ago. And the theme of it, and he quite literally said, opened up the paragraph with, homework is bullshit. Yes, he wrote that in his college admissions essay. And he went through why, basically. And he was saying that, he's a good student, he shows up to class, pays attention, does all his classwork. Why does he have to go home and just do the same thing he did that day? He wants to spend time with his family. He wants to spend time with his friends because he believes that social relationships are the key to future success. It's not doing repetitive work over and over again. And you could feel his anger coming out in this essay. But it really showed these are his values. He is absolutely sticking to them. And now he's studying business at NYU. So clearly they didn't mind that he took that little bit of a risk and just kind of put himself out there, and this is what he believes and why, and it worked. So if you're a kind of student who has really strong, passionate opinions about something and you just want to send it, I think that can work, tastefully, of course. All right, so that's all the personal statement. And again, those are 650 words. Those are considered the long essays. So those are the ones that take the most amount of time to do. Most of my students, we go through 8 to 10 drafts. So as you can imagine, that takes 10 to 20 hours, at least of their time, and then more of my time. We go back and forth, making sure that the communication is clear. So moral of that story, don't wait too late to start, because a student who starts now has all summer to work on it, a little bit of the fall. When I get a senior who calls me and it's October 15th and the application is due November 1st, and we only have 2 weeks to take something from meh to great, it's not going to happen. We could do as much as we can, but there just isn't the time to give it the attention that it needs. So I can't emphasize enough to start soon, way sooner than later. So kids, here's your sign. Supplemental essays. Supplemental essays are usually shorter, usually 100 to 300 words. Really depends on the school. And these are more direct. They communicate the specific traits and interests that help the committee understand how you fit into the campus community, whether it's the community of your major or the community overall. So they're much more direct questions, and therefore they require much more of a direct answer. Supplemental essays aren't meant to be the sort of narrative stories per se, but they do still have to show off your character traits. So the most common topics are the why this school. So why do you want to attend this college is pretty commonly asked. The why do you want to study this major? Or what are your intellectual interests? Those are kind of combined sometimes. And then tell us about your most important extracurricular. So some variation on these themes are the most common topics. So I like to sort of talk about them a little bit more. So the why us essay, really what the college wants to know is, how are we the best fit for you, right? They don't want students coming that they don't think will actually take advantage of what the school has to offer. They also don't want students coming who don't really know anything about the school. So things that you shouldn't really talk about, like for example, NYU actually used to have a why us essay, and then they actually got rid of it and changed it to something else, because I imagine every single essay was, I want to go to NYU because New York City is great. Okay, but that doesn't say anything about the college, and that doesn't say anything about what you want, And I'm not saying don't mention location, but it has to be really specific, right? Like if you're going to NYU and you want to go into the acting program and you say, okay, well, and New York City is the backdrop for my favorite Spider-Man movie. If you give a really, really specific reason, then that could be okay, but you definitely don't want to give a general reason. Or something like, I want to go to Alabama because the football team is great. Okay, you can still be a football fan and not go to that college. So that's not a very convincing reason. You really have to be specific. So What research is the school doing? What are the specific organizations, both professional and personal interests that you want to join? What specific internship or study abroad opportunities does the school have to offer? It's really about doing your research, like digging into the website and knowing exactly what this school has to offer and how you personally are going to take advantage of those opportunities to achieve your goals. So that's what it's about. With the YS essay, I tell all my students, you have to start with your mission. What is it that you actually want to achieve in life? And then how is this college going to help you do that? Right? So it's really about the overall goal and why the college is going to be the best resource for you to achieve that goal. So just by you don't want to tell them things they already know, right? Like if they have a specific, some schools have like a special winter break programs or something, like don't tell them what they already know about themselves. Tell them the specific things you're going to take advantage of, the specific classes, the specific labs you want to participate in. Be specific. I work with students on this essay, and that's just my most commonly uttered phrase is just be more specific, be more specific. And if you think you're being specific, you need to go back and be more specific. So I'm hoping that I get that point across. Be specific. And then the why major and extracurricular essays. So the approach to this is pretty similar. You really want to talk about what your interest is. And yes, there's storytelling, and by storytelling, again, we don't mean write a whole story, because like you might have 300 words, but you can still use very short anecdotes, I guess is what we mean by storytelling here. Connect the dots to your area of interest. So, why do you want to study business? Business is a huge field. So do you have a passion for sustainable fashion materials, right? Be specific. Vary it depending on word count. So that's a very much depends. Include telling details. Use intellectual touchstones or insider language. So just jargon, right? If you have a particular interest in a major, for example, and you've already done a lot of reading on it, go ahead and drop some particle physics terminology. The admissions officer might not have any idea what you're talking about, but it will certainly sound like you know what you're talking about. I have a student right now who's writing an essay on, he designed his own math course and he's studying fundamental loops and topology. And I had to Google what all that was because I'm not a math person. But the fact that he explained his interest in it and all of the intellectual questions he had around it really showed that, well, he knew what he was talking about. And just from the, human perspective of, again, this is sales and marketing. If somebody sounds confident in what they're selling, you're going to be more likely to believe them, right? And then intertwine relevant interests to your major. So that goes for the extracurricular, again, and the major one. So your extracurricular essays, the extracurricular that you pick, should probably be the one that is most in alignment with your further goals, right? Because the college will want to know, how has this activity impacted your desires, your motivations, impacted your critical thinking, impacted your goals? So be specific. Still the name of the story here. And then there's a lot of other topics, and I don't have the space to list all of them because there's so many. But basically, if you know what character traits you want to highlight, you can kind of be ready for any of it. So you'll see questions about contributing to diversity, to the social experience, your roommate, reflect on the time you exhibited resilience, back to determination there, social issues you want to solve, what topic could you talk about for hours, right? And there's no right or wrong answer for these ones, which is cool, right? You can just pick something that interests you. Historical moments, how you define your success. And then this last one seems like a pretty silly question, but if you guys know anything about University of Chicago, they are well known for their very silly questions. And this was one of them a little while ago. If matter is finite, how can Olive Garden give out unlimited pasta? And it's a question really designed to make students think really critically, analytically, think deeply, and use some of their knowledge in math, science, history, whatever it is, to try to explain this sort of unexplainable phenomenon. University of Chicago also had a question one year. The prompt was find X. That was it, find X. And so you really have to jump out of bounds to try to find a way to answer that in 200 words. But bringing it all back to the character traits is what's going to tie everything together. So how do you prepare? All the things I've been talking about, right? You want to think critically. So everything that you do, think about your why. Why are you doing this? Why is this important? Right? Your self-awareness around how can you be better at whatever this is doing, right? What challenges are you facing that are either, outwardly imposed, is it just, you don't have the time to take this certain class, do this certain activity because there's a conflict? Or is there an inner challenge? Are you getting in your own way? Are you battling procrastination perchance, right? What can you do to try to push past the boundaries that might be, placed on you or you are placing on yourself, right? And what are you learning from that process? Making important associations between the activities that you're doing, the overall impact that you could possibly have on the world through what you're doing, and then ultimately communicate clearly, whether it's written, which will show up in the essays, spoken, which will show up in the interviews, or just overall. And it's not just communicating on the application itself, but how are you communicating with your peers, right? If you're a good communicator with your peers, you might find yourself rising to a leadership position, whether you want to or not, right? And some students are like that. They just kind of have this natural ability that people just listen to them because they're so good at speaking what's on their mind in a respectful way. How well are you communicating to your teachers? Right? Because your teachers ultimately will be writing a recommendation letter. So if they know that you're very direct and clear about what you want, what you're going to do, you're assertive, not aggressive, not passive, right? If you have this confidence about you in the way that you speak, they will be more likely to be your advocate. So critical thinking, awareness, associations, clear communication, these are the skills that will help you not only write good essays, but will help you succeed in the whole admissions process and ultimately in life. So thank you. And that sort of wraps up my presentation here. And I've got a few more informational slides, but I would love to open it up to your questions, whether that's about essays or about college admissions in general. If you're interested in having some personal one-on-one or classroom help with essays, this is our essay writing course that we offer online once a year. But yeah, I'd love to open it up to Q&A.
So at the moment. Nikki,
yes.
someone had wrote in and said, so essentially we have to be an imaginative storyteller for college apps.
Yeah, but like that's the ideal, I mean, if you want to go to the most selective colleges in the world, you're going to be battling against other imaginative storytelling types. If you want to just go to Rutgers, you don't have to be a Pulitzer Prize winning essay writer. And I think it just, again, it boils down to how well are you showing off your character traits, right? I mean, these essays, there are so many levels of writing, and yeah, being a good storyteller is going to help. But if you don't have those skills, there's still ways that you can structure it to get your point across, which is why, we went through the hero's journey. We're trying to give you tools to be a little bit more of an imaginative storyteller, because that is a bit of the game at the end of the day. Yes. So what other questions can I answer for you guys? Here's some more information about us.
I'm making this one up, Nikki, no one wrote it, but if your student is in like 7th or 8th grade, I know you said start early, but how do you start writing your personal statement when you're 13 years old or whatever it is? I don't know. I've lost track of time.
Yeah. Well, you don't start writing your exact personal statement, but you can write personal statements as a category. Journaling is great, or just reflecting on things that are happening in your life and how you think about them and how you feel about them, and practicing creative writing. I mean, write short stories. When I start working with students in the earlier years, I have them write an extracurricular diary or journal, which basically I give them 6 questions, right? What do you do? So let's say they're, on the soccer team. What do you do? I'm on the soccer team. Why do you do it? Because I like sports. I like being competitive. I like having teammates. What challenges have you faced? my own personal fitness, getting along with my teammates, challenging opponents. So it's sort of like the first bits of the hero's journey. And then we get to the reflective parts. Okay, so how did you overcome those challenges? What did you learn about yourself from overcoming those challenges? And how are you applying those lessons to other parts in your life? So the sooner students can be thinking and writing in this sort of self-analytical way, and thinking about their motivations and then writing it down and then maybe turning them into stories, that will be great practice. I mean, it's never too soon to start that process.
Awesome. Thank you. So I've got a couple of others that came in. So would it be okay if you referenced a historical figure that is admired and how they've impacted our college application?
So I would say that it depends, right? Making a quick reference to a historical figure, I think is good, right? It shows that you're making these connections across various fields of interest. The caveat with something like that would be you want to make sure that the essay is still about you and not about this historical figure. Like I've had students in the past, they'll send their first or second draft to me and they want to talk about what a great influence on their life their grandfather was, which is great. But the whole essay turns into an essay about grandpa. And I know a lot about grandpa by the end of the essay, and I still don't know anything about the student. So any reference you make, whatever it is, references are great. It just still has to go back to what are the student's character traits? What did the student learn from that relationship or from that knowledge? How is the student using that knowledge? But references are good. Just make sure it's not all about the reference.
Okay, thank you. We're going to take a little bit of a detour, stepping away from essays for a moment. When should one start requesting letters of recommendation?
If you're a junior, now, spring of your junior year. Yep.
And do you help with brag sheets or like summaries to give the teachers or guidance counselors?
Yeah, for sure. And brag sheets are a little bit more important than maybe you guys think. I know I have students who are like, oh yeah, I'll just fill it out, but it's not just a list. This is really the opportunity that you have. It's almost like another essay you have to write where you can really go into specific detail about what you did, why you did it, right? Your challenges, what you've learned about yourself, the reflection on the whole process. Because maybe your teachers know you fairly well enough from class, but your guidance counselors, they don't really get to know you that well. They maybe have 1-2 meetings with you a year, unless you have other things going on that require you to be in their office all the time. But guidance counselors have like 300 kids each. There's no way they're really going to get to know you on the level that they can write a high quality recommendation letter. And part of the application is a letter from the counselor, like that's a requirement. So having really detailed, fleshed out brag sheets that, again, show off all of those character traits you want the admissions committee to know about you is a really important part of the recommendation letter process.
And do you do separate brag sheets to each teacher or each letter?
Depends. Some teachers will have their own form. Others, there's just a generic form that guidance sends out that gets sent to all teachers. So that's something that you'll probably just have to ask your teacher that, like, is there just like the regular form on Naviance or SCORE that you want me to fill out, or do you have one that's specific for you? But a teacher would usually tell you that.
I didn't ask the question as clearly as I should have.
Okay.
Sorry. Do you answer the brag sheet the same for all 3?
So it depends on the questions. Like some questions will be for specific teachers, like tell me about, one project we did in our class that you really loved and why. Obviously, that's going to be different for the different teachers. So I think there's just like a big, it depends on that. I mean, if it's a question like, tell me about an extracurricular that you really enjoyed this year, I don't think that answer necessarily needs to be different per teacher, but if it's something more related to the class, then yeah.
Okay, thank you. So SAT scores, if it's an average score, when do you think sending them helps or doesn't help?
So data is available online for schools that do publish it that tells you the middle 50% bracket of SAT scores. And the general rule of thumb has been that if you're below that 25th percentile, then don't send it. That being said, because test optional has been a growing trend, all those scores are now kind of skewed because the only kids submitting are the higher ones. It's driving it up. It's like this weird snowball effect. So this can be a little bit complicated because, let's say you're just on the cusp of that 25th percentile, and you're just going to have to think about it in the greater context of your application. Like if your grades are below average and the SAT score you think will bring it up, your overall profile, then you want to submit it. If you have really, really good grades, but your SAT score is not so good, then maybe you don't want to submit it. But something to also think about is that test optional was designed to be more of an access issue, meaning like students who maybe lived in locations that you don't have easy access to testing centers, maybe students that have like they're brilliant readers and writers, but they have a math disability, so their math section wouldn't be very good. Students who maybe have, they have to work on Saturdays and provide for their families, so they can't afford to take the time off to go take an SAT for 3 hours on a Saturday morning. So that's what this was designed for. So if you're a student who doesn't really have any access issues with taking the SAT and you don't do terrible on it, there's a possibility that admissions committee will be like, well, if they're not submitting it, then it means they're embarrassed of their score. It's not because they couldn't actually physically take it. So it's a little bit more complex than just, below a certain threshold, submit, above a certain threshold, submit. I would say the best thing would be to call us for help with your particular situation, but that's sort of the rough gist of it.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we addressed that question. I think that we got all of it. So that would, because that was an emailed in question,
Yes.
and then it was a repeat. So how important is getting a job on a college application?
So it's not that getting a job that pays you is important so much as doing something that challenges you is important. So like if you're already doing a million other things and you're participating in your extracurriculars, you've got other service opportunities, leadership opportunities, I wouldn't say you need to add a job on just to check off a box, right? But there's definitely nothing wrong with having a job, and having a job is a good experience overall. Having some money in your wallet is really good. So it's like a yes and no. It kind of depends on what else the student is involved in, how much bandwidth they have. Do they need a job? I mean, if mom and dad are like, hey, like you're not going to get a car until you can pay for your own gas, then yeah, you should get a job. But it's not like a box to check off for the application.
What about a paid internship? Is that helpful also?
That's a job. At the end of the day, right? You're getting paid. Any sort of experience in a field you're interested in is good. Like if you want to go to med school, you should go shadow a doctor. Whether or not that doctor will pay you, I guess that's up to that doctor. But any, experience that you can get and really be immersed in a field you're interested in, that will help you learn, do you actually want to keep pursuing it, first of all? But paid versus unpaid, I don't think is a factor with that so much as, is it related to your overall goals?
Terrific. So Nikki, we've got a few more letters of recommendation questions. And I know this is an essay type of presentation. Some of them are getting a little bit more specific, but I'm going to read them out and you can let me know whether we have time to cover them here, because it's also 8:05, so I want to be cognizant.
I got all night if anybody else wants to stick around.
All right. So would a brag sheet be sent by the teachers to the students with a standard set of questions?
Sometimes. Depends on the teacher.
So, and I think it's different for different school districts too, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of what I've seen in my experience is that either like Naviance has some like preset questions that sometimes is in there. Sometimes they don't turn it on until the fall. I mean, every department kind of does it a little bit differently. I was just meeting with a student earlier today whose student sent him like, here are the specific questions on like Google Classroom. She sent it out to him. Whether or not that's going to pop up in his Naviance later, he doesn't know because like it hasn't been turned on yet. So it really depends on the teacher. Like the best person to ask for this question would be the teacher you're going to ask. They will tell you where to find those questions. And if they don't have any questions or a brag sheet, then we have a template you use. There's stuff all over the internet you can use. I'm sure they will appreciate having something to reference.
All right, very cool. Oh, the internship, the paid internship, I think that I did not read it correctly. It's paying to get an internship.
So like a pay to play.
Yes.
So with those, so there's not really many pay to play internships. I've heard like the research ones. But at the end of the day, where you got the job from, nobody asks. Right. And like, if like, think about it in the real world, like you get a job, your future boss isn't going to say like, how did you find out about this job? Did you hire a recruiter? Did you go on LinkedIn? Did you go on, Facebook jobs? Like, they don't really care how you got it, just the experience that you have. So there are, where pay to play comes in and it doesn't matter would be like if you're paying to go to, because I get this question too, which is tangentially related, like a summer program at a college. So like, let's say Harvard has this summer program that's hosted maybe by Harvard, maybe by a third-party company, but you got to pay whatever thousands of dollars to go. Is this going to help you get into Harvard? And the answer is no. Any summer program that you pay to go to is not going to help you with college admissions, right? But if you pay for some sort of placement service to help you get a research position, help you get an internship, help you get a job, you don't have to disclose that on your application. So what they don't know won't hurt.
Well, hopefully that addressed the concern.
Okay.
Okay. So here's another one for you. If a student has not decided which colleges to apply to yet, then letter of recommendation does he or she need to get in now? Okay, hold on. Okay, I think I got it. Do you need, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? The letter of recommendation or deciding your college list and then ask for the letter?
You can ask for the letter beforehand. So the letter, the way that it works is, again, depending on the system that the schools use, like Naviance, for example, you would request a letter through Naviance. Naviance interrelates with the Common App, and then the letter kind of gets sent through it. Other times you could just do it directly from the Common App, where you add your recommender through the Common App. So you can ask a teacher now, if you're a junior, to write the letter and then just, have it sitting as a doc on their hard drive or whatever. And then when the time comes, you can make that specific link between colleges. But the letters aren't written specifically for colleges. It's not like you have to say, "Dear Harvard Admissions Committee, I recommend this student for your Harvard biology program." Like, the letters are pretty generic. It's just like, "I recommend for your college this student." So ask now. Yes. Even if you don't know the final list yet.
Good recommendation. Thank you. Can the letter of recommendation be from any teacher? So for example, can it be a language teacher if the student is applying for a computer science degree?
Sure. So I tell students to pick teachers that know them the best and can write the best letter that advocates for them. Teachers that really know, their characters and how they interact with others and how they interact with material. Guidance counselors are one recommendation letter that's pretty much always involved. And then that's one teacher, but sometimes several teachers. Maybe if you're doing computer science, you can pick language. and math, or maybe you have like an AP computer science teacher. Other good teachers will be teachers that are advisors. So like maybe a club advisor is one kind of teacher. Maybe you've never had them in class, but like you're on their debate team, so they can speak really well for how good of a writer, speaker, communicator you are. Or coaches that happen to be teachers. So there isn't one particular kind of teacher that is good for any particular major. But it does happen that, like students who want to study medicine often pick their biology or math teachers, but also English teachers are really good writers. So they're really good to ask. Or like history, like any humanities teacher, they just they get into that field because they have a natural inclination towards reading and writing. So in my experience, their letters have been much more interesting and detailed and fruitful than, the math teacher's recommendation letter might say things that are good, but it just might be a very dry, formulaic kind of letter. So almost the worst thing you can get is a generic letter. You really want a teacher who's going to praise you. So whatever subject that is what matters.
What about asking a teacher that you had like several years ago? Like
how many years ago we talking? Freshman year might be a little too early, just because, you've probably grown and matured over the years. So you're not applying as a freshman. So sophomore year is usually the earliest I would go, and only if like the teacher really knows you well. A teacher that you've had for like 2 years, even better. Or a teacher that you have both in class and as a club advisor or sports advisor, also pretty good. So like if you had, maybe you had the teacher freshman year for math, but they've been your lacrosse coach for the past 4 years, that'd be great.
Awesome. I'm checking to see if there's any others. I'm thinking we might need to do a presentation on letters of recommendation.
Yeah, maybe it could be our next topic.
I got a thumbs up from somebody that.
All right.
Oh, wait, hold on. I think I see one over here. Can you recommend clubs or courses that attracts colleges if a kid wants to go to aerospace engineering?
Clubs or class? I mean, that depends on what the school has to offer. Anything engineering related, robotics or technology, student association, anything tech related. There's, NASA internships and summer programs out there. And within those, like I have a student right now who's interested in aerospace. He lives in Texas, but he's in his technology student association, but the particular competitions that he does within TSA are aerospace related. But aerospace is mostly like mechanical and electrical engineering, right? A little bit of like dynamics and physics. So anything that touches upon, join your physics club could be good.
What about outside of school or summer programs?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot out there, and there are colleges that have aerospace programs that'll invite students in, or like, do Air Force ROTC or join the, what is it? Not Air Cadets. I'm thinking Sea Cadets, but there's an Air Force one. The name escapes me right now, but Civil Air Patrol. There we go. Join the Civil Air Patrol. Like, that'd be cool. ROTC is a great way to get into aerospace. I know military isn't super popular among a lot of our clients, but ROTC, it's a free ride. Air Force Academy, Naval Academy, Maritime Academies, free college, guaranteed career path. You just got to do 4 years in the military. Not a bad trade, especially if you go in as an officer. So that's something to consider. I try to entice students into that, but that's a family decision. But yeah, anything physics that you can do, or start your own club, right? Start a aviation club where you guys, do drone racing in the football field and design your own gliders. And, if there's a club that you want that doesn't exist, start it. Now you're a leader. Great.
Very, very useful. We've got lots of thank yous and useful, and we will, Nikki has up on the screen, oh, she just flipped it, how to get a copy of the presentation. So the QR code on the right is how you can get a copy of tonight's presentation.
I think in the follow-up email, you might send out a link to that too, in case people miss it.
Of course I can.
So I know there are a lot of people who registered who couldn't join us tonight, so. Okey-dokey.
All right. Anything else before we close down for the evening? All right. Well, I think that they now have a lot more knowledge, and I'm sure a lot more questions too. So thanks for putting up how you can follow us and read the blog articles about essays and letters of recommendation and so forth. There's a ton of resources on our website. So I think that will be really helpful.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming out and spending your after dinner hours, or maybe you were eating dinner while watching us, a little entertainment, educational entertainment for the evening. And I'm glad to be of service. And I think a lot of you joined in because I posted all over a bunch of Facebook groups. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I didn't put my personal email up here, but you can find me. I think is my email on the website. I don't know, but you can email him.
Actually, you're either that or your contact us. If you go back, that goes to your page. So.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. So there's the general phone number and stuff, but if you found me on Facebook and you want to just have a quick question, glad to answer. I'm here to be a community resource. That's why we've been doing these presentations. Obviously, this is a service we provide, but we just like reaching out and educating the public and telling people it's a bit of a mysterious process sometimes. There's a lot of confusion and myth busting about it. So we've been doing a lot of these presentations at libraries and for PTOs. So if any of you are involved in any parent teacher organizations and are interested in bringing us to talk to the school, I'd be glad to do that too. Libraries, just whatever we can do to help, let me know.
Yeah, so actually, you know what, Nikki, now that you just said that, let me throw in the chat a link to the presentations in case someone wants to share that with their
I'm doing one tomorrow night for Fort Lee Library Zoom if anybody's involved with them. I've got North Brunswick I'm going to do in person this summer. So if anybody wants to see me live, come to North Brunswick and take a watch. I think I'll be doing one on college lists. I don't know, it's in July. I go to Middletown. I think I'm going to Middletown in September, giving one as well. So I'm around. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I know that she's rambling and she doesn't know specific dates, but if you subscribe,
follow us, you'll find out.
Yeah, we'll be posting that information as it gets closer. And then the presentations that we have available, I just popped that into the chat. So.
Sweet.
All right. Thanks, Nikki.
Yeah. Thank you. Is there anything else for tonight? No. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all your thank yous. Awesome. Hope you all have a great night.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.